All right, welcome back. Tokunbo Afikuyomi Jnr. is joining me right now. He's the editor-in-chief at Stears Business. Hello, Tokunbo.
Hi, Nancy. Morning. How are you doing?
How are you doing? Tokes. That's what I call you, so so in case it comes out. All right, welcome to the program. Now, let's get started. The African Continental Free Trade Area. I hope I got that right because it's a long name. African Continental Free Trade Area is AfCFTA. Yes, quite long. Do you think that a lot of people even know or get this idea that Africa will begin to trade with itself, more with itself from January 1, 2020? I guess, do you think that even the people that are in the line or that will be in the line of this trade that will start happening by January 2021, do they even understand something like that will start to happen?
Yeah, so the short answer is no, and it's not a problem that's specific to Nigeria. I think generally, whenever countries go into these big, broad free trade agreements that are done by governments, the simple people on the street or the average person on the street isn't aware of what exactly is going on or what it means for them. I think most of the major exporters and importers in Nigeria would definitely know it's happening, and they will already be looking at the necessary documentation that they will need to allow them to benefit from the free trade agreement. But for the small, medium businesses that are not quite in the know with trade agreements, they will be less sure about what exactly it means. So there's an emphasis from the government to make sure that people do understand what actually changes on the 1st of January.
Tokunbo, just briefly tell my viewers what this AfCFTA really means in basic terms, because we've been pursuing it for quite a long time. When I mean we, Africa. And now it's coming into place, January 2021. Because of COVID-19 pandemic, it was supposed to have started July 1st, 2020, but it's now been postponed to January 2021. So in basic terms, what does this African Continental Free Trade Area means?
So I guess for context, this is Africa trying to become like the European Union. So the goal for the AU is to one day look like one entire country. Africa is supposed to, at least they want us to look like one entire country. So same currency, almost same passport type of situation. And this free trade agreement is one of the steps towards that dream or toward that goal. And in simple terms, what the agreement means is that all the 55 members of the agreement are saying we are going to open up our economy to each other. And what that means in practical terms is normally or ordinarily, when countries trade with each other, they face tariffs or taxes. If I want to export something to, say, South Africa or the EU, I will face a particular tariff. I have to pay a tax on that. But with this agreement, almost all tariffs are going to be reduced to 0%. So that means intra-Africa trade should, in theory, improve. The second main thing as well is that non-tariff barriers, so other barriers that are not related to any monetary tax, are also going to be aligned. For example, if I'm exporting, say, a packet of biscuits to South Africa, South Africa has its own consumer laws and its own equivalent of NAFDAC that has requirements on labeling and the kind of chemicals I can use to sell a biscuit in South Africa. What this African Free Trade Agreement does is that we align on those different regulations so that it's easier for any business to export any good across the continent. And the same goes for services as well. So if I'm offering accounting services to Ghana or any other country in the agreement, life is supposed to be made easier for me through a better visa process, for example. And then finally, at the border itself, something called trade facilitation, where just the whole procedure of clearance and all these other roadblocks at borders are wiped away, essentially, so that it's easy for trade to happen between borders. So that's basically what it's going to look like in practice.
Now, Nigeria has ratified. What benefits do you think we can get? And let's put it into context. Benefits, how beneficial will it be to the Nigerian market that is still a dumping ground for most countries, especially like China? The NBS results of reports that just came out clearly showed us that though our foreign trade increased, the percentage of imports was more than export. So our trade deficit widened. So how much benefits would we get there? 3 weeks to the takeoff date. 3 weeks to the takeoff date, our borders are still closed. And I'm wondering, you know, okay, just go ahead so that I don't say what I want to say.
No, you make some very good points there. And, you know, one of the major things is China. So Nigeria's main trading partners are North Africa. Nigeria is one of the lowest in terms of intra-Africa trade. I think it's something like 4% of our trade is with other African countries. So the first thing to realize is that, at least in the short term, this free trade agreement is not going to do that much in terms of benefits for Nigeria. The World Bank has done some calculations, and over time, like over a few decades, the benefits will come. But they're not going to come when we do things like reduce our tariffs to 0%. They're going to come when Nigeria actually does the implementations of things like border arrangements, where we reduce the barriers at the border. According to the World Bank's estimates, that is where Nigeria will see its true gains from the free trade agreement. And the World Bank puts that number for a 4% increase in our GDP or our income, if we are able to reduce those frictions at the border. Reducing our tariffs to 0% is not going to give us any benefits, according to the World Bank estimate. So in the short term, we are still trading with China and with Netherlands and Europe. And so the agreement is not going to give us anything, I guess, to write home about at the beginning. But over time, if Nigeria is able to address the border issues and any other alignment in terms of regulation and visas, only when that is done will we start to see any gains from the agreement.
Tokunbo, do you think you're seeing any it's not willingness, is it readiness or preparedness right now, 3 weeks to the takeoff, apart from the ratification that just happened a few days ago, some kind of serious talk around how Nigeria, because it seems that we continue to live in this utopia, in this our world of, oh, we are the largest market. We are the beautiful bride of Africa. Everybody will come to us. We have a population of 206 million people, according to the National Population Commission. Forgetting the fact that 206 million people, many of us are poor, and forgetting the fact that after we come into being in January 2021, that will control a market of 1.2 billion people, $2.5 trillion in GDP, hopefully. So we may not be the beautiful bride anymore for Africa. Are you seeing that seriousness on the part of government, vis-a-vis also that our trade policy is not even, we don't have a wholesome trade policy?
Yeah, I mean, so the technocrats and the people behind the scenes, the civil servants, that I've been talking with, are doing a lot of that preparatory work. Now, what we're not seeing is as much emphasis on the government side. There's been talk about the government reopening the borders. I think Buhari and Osinbajo have mentioned, and also the Minister of Finance have mentioned that the borders will be reopened shortly, although no particular timeline on when that's going to happen. But I think the government hasn't done enough in terms of preparing for the agreement, and it's probably why we also try to delay it as well over time, because what is about to happen is quite significant. Whether Nigeria likes it or not, Africa is going to open itself to each other. And what that means is, as an investor, if I want to open up a factory and I choose somewhere like Ghana, I know that I have easy access to any other country to do that. Now, the gain of building a factory in Nigeria specifically has windowed down a bit, because if I open up a factory in Ghana, for example, I have access to 1.2 billion other markets in Africa. I don't need Nigeria by itself anymore. That population, fantasy has reduced, especially when you consider the income levels of the country. So that whole Nigeria has the markets, as this free trade agreement comes into force, is less important for investors, because if they pick any other African country, they also have a big market size as well to gain from. And the other thing that Nigeria hasn't quite prepared for is what actually happens when a free trade agreement is signed. Think about it this way. There are 55 members. Each member has its own different sector. And the way I think about it is, when we open up ourselves to each other, is basically like saying there are now 55 agricultural sectors. There are now 55 financial services sectors. There are now 55 oil and gas sectors. And what consumers and businesses start to do is they pick which one of them they want to use. So for example, consumers will say, I prefer Ghana for agricultural goods. Since there's easy access to it, I'll take Ghanaian agriculture. I won't take Nigerian agriculture. Similarly, okay, I want Liberian financial services. Or I want Nigerian legal services. And what starts to happen is that some sectors will win and some sectors will lose. And according to the estimates, the high value manufacturing sector is going to be one of the biggest gainers of the free trade agreement, whereas low value manufacturing sector is going to be one of the biggest losers. And Nigeria is going to see a hit there. And so I think the government hasn't done enough to start to do the groundwork that moves or make sure that the sectors that are about to lose as a result of the agreement, because with all agreements, there are winners and losers, and there will be losers in some sectors in Nigeria and indeed other countries. But the government we haven't seen enough for the government in terms of making sure that the losers are able to then find new sectors that they're going to be able to work in. And that's why we also saw the manufacturing union complain about this agreement. In fact, it was paused because of them a couple of years ago. And it's because of this fear of what happens when we're opened to other African countries that can start to compete with us and kick us out of the market.
Especially that competition would be so glaring in the fact that some of our structural challenges are still inherent, that we haven't gotten it right. The issue of power, the issue of a business-friendly environment, the issue of, some structural defects which we have that some African countries may have gone above us in that. But let me bring back this interview I had with Wamkele Mene, His Excellency Wamkele Mene, who is the first Secretary General of African Continental Free Trade Area. Tongue twister. He was in Nigeria, I think, 2-3 months ago, his first visit, and it was his first TV interview here in the country. Just take a listen. That's the man in charge. His office is in Accra. Just let's take a listen to an excerpt, and I'll come back to you.
I should say that we should not expect that each and every single country will implement the agreement and will have the requisite customs infrastructure from the 1st of January 2021. Usually, it takes 9 months to 1 year for a country to do that. But there will be many countries who will be ready, and we will work with everybody to make sure that that in time we all have the requisite customs infrastructure to implement the agreement. So I'm optimistic. I'm eternally optimistic about this agreement, because I believe that it is actually, when you look at post-colonial Africa, this is the first time that we have had such a pan-African initiative that is supported by the highest level in Africa. All heads of states want this to succeed, and all heads of states are fully committed.
Tokunbo, are you optimistic like Wamkele Mene was optimistic? He showed that optimism to me just a few months ago when he was seated here. And he raised a very important issue, customs. When he talked about that, I thought about our own Nigerian customs. Because our own Nigerian customs have been said that they are a trade facilitator, not collection agents as it is. How many of the customs people even know that African Continental Free Trade Area will start in January 2021? I don't know. If they know, they should tell me. But what do you think? And the processes, at the customs, we're talking about land borders or our borders closed right now, is partly or majorly a failure of the customs, because if our customs are even working well, should you even close the borders in the first place?
Yes, I mean, it's a very good point to raise, and I think this point is especially crucial in Nigeria because, like I mentioned with those World Bank estimates, we will not get the gains from trade or the benefits of this agreement if we do not implement those improvements at the border. And some of the numbers that we're seeing from the World Bank is that this agreement has the potential to reduce at least 10 million people from poverty in Nigeria. But that is not going to happen if we do not implement these custom arrangements. So that's the context, and that's how much that's how much is at stake. So with the border, it's a very difficult issue because Africa as a whole, and in particular Nigeria and its neighboring countries, have a very serious border problem in that it's very difficult to enforce them. Half of it is down to resource and, I guess, incompetence, but a lot of it is also down to the geographical difficulties that they face. I have visited the Seme border on numerous occasions, and there's just so much, how do I put it? There's so many gaps. The Ogun states that border Seme border, there are so many different crossings over water, over mountains, over cities, and it's extremely difficult to actually police what can go in and out. Now, this free trade agreement is supposed to make sure that goods from Africa are free to flow between African countries. But they also need to make sure that goods that are not from Africa do not benefit from that, from this new free trade agreement. So what we're not doing is opening up the border for everybody so that, say, a China can easily come and dump, goods in Nigeria, for example. And so what needs to happen at customs is that enforcement of, okay, this good is made in Africa, therefore it has free access, whereas this good is not made in Africa, so it does not have free access. So the customs has a lot of work to do in terms of preparing for that situation. But based on the last time I visited Seme border, which was a couple of months ago, it doesn't look like a very good situation. I always make this joke. It is so much easier to get through the border with Benin if you are doing some sort of illegal bribery or just trying to walk across, than trying to get through with your papers and trying to sort them out. That route is a lot harder than trying to just go through informally.
Okay.
And these are one of the issues that we're dealing with.
Talking about the visuals we're seeing right now is the visuals of the signing just about 3 weeks ago of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. China and 15 other nations such as Myanmar, Australia, Japan, Indonesia, New Zealand, all signed what we call the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. What this is, and let me put it in context so that our viewers can understand, that's regional trade bloc right now is controlling 30% of the world's population and about 2.2 billion people. That's 2.2 billion humanity. So Africa now, after being now the largest market, is being, is not as much. We shouldn't echo it so much now. What do you think with this RCEP on board that was just signed about 3 weeks ago, sometime in November, either November 15th or so?
Yeah, it's interesting because this is something that has been ongoing for a very long time. That Asia group, New Zealand, Australia, China, which are very, very top trade institutions. In fact, New Zealand basically relies on exports for its economy, right? Especially in products like dairy. And this is something that has been incoming for a long time through different formats. They've had a comprehensive free trade agreement that was worked on since 2017. And then there's this as well, which has just kicked off. And it's an interesting political play as well, because the likes of the US and India are kind of like sitting on the sidelines at the moment with regard to this very big, as you put it, free trade area. I mean, I guess for Nigeria and Africa, again, this is, as you said, a competitor in terms of, as an investor looking across different regions around the world, where am I more able to get some gain of trade? And potentially the RCEP looks like a very, I guess, attractive bet. But the interesting thing is, though, that the potential gains from the RCEP are actually not as large as what the AfCFTA is supposed to provide. I think the AfCFTA, in terms of the estimates, are going to increase income by something like $450 billion. Which is the equivalent of adding another Ghana and another South Africa on the continent, whereas the RCEP, in terms of gains, is looking at 130 or 180 billion in terms of gains. And the reason for that is that region in Asia is already very well close together, and so there's a limit to how deep this new agreement can go to provide more benefits. Whereas in Africa, because we still have lots of room to go in terms of our interconnectivity, there are more gains of trade to be had by signing this agreement than the RCEP.
Do you think that what happened with the RCEP is would like water down the American influence, because that RCEP was midwifed by China? So do you think that the RCEP would water down the American influence, especially as even President Donald Trump of the United States got out of the TPP, Transatlantic Partnership? You know, so many acronyms. I don't even know how many to my brain can harbor, but the TPP.
Yeah. So no, for sure, I think this is something that China and that region has been trying to do for quite a long time, which is to improve or increase their influence in contrast to the US. And I think this for sure is along that path. And there are already questions of if the US, with a new president, is going to start thinking of which of these agreements the US can potentially join. Because this RCEP is big. You mentioned 30% of the world. You know, it's bigger than the North American agreement with Mexico, the US, and Canada. It's bigger than the European Union. So it's definitely something that makes Asia, and particularly China, who is spearheading the agreement, have a lot more economic and even political influence on matters, on global matters. And the US will definitely be watching closely to see how they can try and either join the agreement or create another one that could be potentially bigger with similar members as well.
Okay, just as we end this session of the interview, what do you think, perhaps enumerate like 1, 2, 3 things our government should do, because it seems that the rest of the world is moving ahead and we're still talking some other things here, you know. So what are the top 3 things we should begin to do right now? Can we even do them in 3 weeks?
Not 3 weeks. But the first one actually is to open the border. That's first things first, because all of these conversations we're having almost mean, you know, very little if the border is closed. So first things first, the border has to be open. And I think number 2 on the list will be to start to look elsewhere in terms of trade. So not just looking at Africa, but then also looking at China, the EU, who are our major trading partners at the moment, to see where we can start to do more trade apart from oil. So thinking of other products, you know, potentially agriculture or even services. You know, India is a very good example of providing, you know, customer service services and other technology services as a country. So Nigeria should think about trade outside of Africa as well as, you know, the AfCFTA. And then the second thing will be to start to solve the actual infrastructure problems that allow us to trade. So, I mean, if you drive from here to Seme-Border, it's probably going to be one of the worst experiences you had on a road. I mean, it is a terrible road that, you know, nothing to write home about. And it's hard to say, okay, we're going to do free trade with African countries if we don't even have infrastructure like roads to facilitate that. Similarly, you know, visa is still an issue. So all those infrastructure problems that actually allow trade to happen, electricity, to actually let us produce goods to trade, those also need to be addressed.
Okay. Tokunbo, I think we've got to leave it here and let's see what happens. Hopefully, God willing, we'll be there in 2021 to analyze what we've done and it has started and what we're doing. Thank you, Tokes, for joining us.
Thank you, Nancy.